All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Save a Craft Load. We are have a great episode today. I appreciate John taking some time. We are here talking with business experts in the brewing, crafting environment about what they are doing, what they're working on, and what they're seeing. And John brings experience not just in the U.S. but global experience. So I've got John Gonzalez from Bespoke Brewing Solutions, and appreciate you, John, taking some time and also being in a different time zone to have a conversation today a little bit about what you guys are doing and what you guys are seeing in the industry. So, John, if you give everyone just a little overview about Bespoke.
Hey Dan, thank you so much for having me and your time as well. Good morning, good evening time over here. I'm actually in Ningbo, China. So Bespoke, we are brewing equipment solution providers based in China, headquarters. I've been here for 17 years, so I have been around the block in China for a bit, speak Mandarin, all that good stuff. So we have a team here that we project managers, CADers, 2D, 3D, and as well as partners in the UK and Australia, Oceania that we work with to provide solutions globally. So to date, I think we're in 18 different countries. We just delivered to Fiji a couple months ago some equipment. So that's our 18th country. Woohoo. And yeah, it's been fun going since 2018.
That's great, John. I appreciate it. I appreciate taking the time. And when a lot of times when I'm talking to some of our partners, I've got to be careful. I talk about what trends they're seeing in the US and what things were happening. I'm really always interested in what others are seeing. So my first
Mhm.
question to you is broader. Maybe you could touch on, yes, it's trends that you're seeing in the US from some of the conversations you're having, but also maybe globally too. I mean, you get the insight. You talk about 18 different countries. That's really impressive. Can you touch on what you're seeing, from across that, maybe some of the trends that you're starting to note as we get almost to the halfway point of 2025 here?
Definitely. Feel as far as the US market, definitely some saturation. You can see it with the brewery closures, unfortunately. A lot of the secondhand market, which we definitely see for some screaming deals going around. Our biggest markets is Oceania. We have a lot of equipment going to Australia, and you're even seeing that there. You're seeing more brewery closures going into receivership. However, we are still ticking along. We are still in production. I do feel we're seeing more hyper local breweries, so maybe in the 5 to 10 barrel range that are really trying to plant their flag at their brewery, draw a circle, whether it be 5 kilometers or 5 miles in radius, and then just really trying to push that market with a small distribution front. So maybe a small canning line or a bottling line to get some to go orders or to distribute and self-distribute really to their local bars and restaurants to get that marketing going.
Okay. Yeah, and that is a trend that have been hearing as well. And I think it's been coming for a little bit. So, when I talk to people about it, it feels like a very known element of 2025 that there aren't those surprises, that you've got to be a little bit, you got to operate leaner, you've got to operate a little smarter, that the markets are maturing. And with that comes, some more competition or a little bit more thought of who are we going to try to sell to. That's interesting. You talked about with the micro markets and things like that, and maybe the solutions are more dialed in, different than maybe thinking about it before. Is that an area that, Bespoke can specialize in, or when you talk about standing on a market, do you guys have the capabilities to produce a solution that could help a small microbrewery that's really trying to do 5 to 10, as well as capabilities that could go higher? Can you touch on what parts of the markets you play in?
Definitely. Our sweet spot is definitely the smaller breweries, mainly because no brewery is the same. We're bespoke by name and nature. Bespoke means customized. So when we are approached by a client, we have that paper napkin layout that they have this space. That's when we really have some fun playing Tetris. So really trying to make that space lean and optimize for flow because the less brewery space you use, the more you can use most likely for F&B, get more butts in the seat and hopefully sell more beer or product. But from that aspect as well, we also do bigger systems. I'm actually here in Ningbo because we have a 50 barrel going to Scotland. So we play in that whole range, but I would say the smaller range is where we started, and that's really our bread and butter. And that's where it's a lot of fun because it's a lot of smaller businesses, maybe mom and pops, that we really connect with them, and we really want all our clients to be successful. But when you have them really trying to grind it, it's a very rewarding to be able to help them, see through their dream basically.
Yeah, I hear that. I got a chance to come back a couple of weeks ago from CBC, and I was running into people who were a few years ago I was meeting, they were brewery and planning, right? And they've got that, like, you could tell they're just kind of dreaming and walking through the aisle and thinking about how they're going to do everything in the long list of stuff. But it's fun, it's exciting. I know it's a little more nerve-wracking for them, but then to get a chance to connect with them and see pictures of their place. It's
Mhm.
pretty cool to see how they're making that happen. And then, so my question is though is a little bit on how you guys do that because how do you take the napkin, as you mentioned, I like that, and you kind of talk to them about type of thing is like you don't, just because you could spread it out over X amount of square feet, that might not be you got to be thinking about it that you're going to want space for all that stuff and then future space. How do you go? What's your process from I have a napkin, I have an idea, I kind of have a warehouse that I'm looking at type of thing, and then how do you go through not just, the design stage, but then, quality control, estimating, delivery and setup. Can you walk me through that? And maybe an example of, you talked about a location in Scotland, talk about maybe it's locations in Texas or Australia. How do you guys do that?
It all starts with a layout, a dream, what they're trying to do. And the big things for me is how much beer you want to make, how big of a space you have, and how much money you got. Those are the
Mhm.
three really, gate checks. So we work with them on understanding, hey, you want to make 1,000 barrels, you want to make 2,000 barrels, but your space is really only going to support 750, unfortunately. Or maybe your budget's not going to be able to afford that. So we try to optimize and find that sweet spot, for them. When we approach a location, it's all about, first off, can you get the stuff in and will it fit? And can it be supported from a utility standpoint, from an ins and out standpoint, because if you have a door in the wrong location and it just messes up your flow, you want to turn things and be able to really optimize that location so you're flowing in with raw materials, your products going out, your cold room, so on and so forth. So we go to that detail, and we have an in-house team of catters that put together that layout in 2D. In some cases, we can do 3D, and that's what we're get really good at because at that point you can really see it come together, and it's pretty
Sure.
amazing. You can see that on our social media. We do share what we're doing nowadays. We
That's
try to keep
awesome.
people up to date. But from there, it's just working with drainage, flooring, the level of detail that you need to go into with a brewery is pretty crazy. It really is. And a lot of times, people don't know or realize, oh, I'm going to put a drain here, but what's going down the drain? And who's looking at what's going down the drain, especially in Australia with trade waste, or how much juice do you have coming into the, or electrical or electricity, excuse me,
Yeah.
coming into the facility if you want to do I'm sorry, an electrically heated brew house, excuse me. Or do you have gas to support a steam boiler or direct fire? If you have direct fire, do you have enough? What are the regulations for the flue
Hmm.
when you're sending gas outside? So there's just a lot of things to think about. We try to bring these questions up because we've experienced it, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in the UK, or Europe, or India, where we've put in a brewery before. There's different things to think about. And we have that experience where we can kind of focus and say, okay, we have the experience in this area. Why don't you go ask these questions? And a lot of times it could be like, oh, they came back with this, okay, well now let's rejig it a bit just to make sure it works or it fits or it's in spec, so to
Yeah.
speak. And then from there, we share everything with our clients. So all of our 2Ds and our 3Ds are shared with our clients through a web link in the cloud. They can access it 24/7. Our production facilities and our in-house CAD team all working off the same drawings. And I think that from a quality control perspective, make sure everyone's working off the same drawings is very important. because that can be sent off to your electricians with the cabinet drawings or the wiring diagrams, or it can be sent off to your architects to make sure the FVs are not too tall when you're opening the manway, you're not hitting something, so on and so forth, which can save a lot of money.
Hmm.
If
Oh,
if it, if it's done right, it can save a lot of money because if it's done wrong, it can be very costly.
yeah. I mean, you bring up probably just you brought up, I heard five or six examples of things that need to go back over and have the discussion is have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Not only just the compliance issues that you talked about in different countries, but then also the operational issues of have you thought through where you're
Mhm.
bringing in those raw, material, where how you're actually, emptying out this into that. So really not just about where the actual equipment will sit and connect and fit, but the functionality. That was actually one of my other questions was about how is the selection go and how does that equipment, tie together? But you really touched on that, how it starts that process and each one being unique. I guess my
Mhm.
question then is a little bit, that I was thinking of and I've heard from other breweries is how do you help a brewery plan for growth? And I think one of the things I hear about early on is they're like, listen, I got X amount of money
Mhm.
and that probably only fits this amount of production and I'm building a brand and all that stuff. But I'd like if I had, unlimited money, show me a brewery's got that, but I would build out all this stuff. And they're like, I just know that's not feasible, but I mean, my 3 year, my 5 year, I want to have that. And I don't want to be told at year three when we're starting to really add some production, add some things like, oh, well, we didn't plan for that, so it's going to be costly. Can you talk about how those conversations go when someone's trying to plan for growth or in their equipment and in their solution?
That's one of the first questions we really have, and it really depends on the space. If we see empty space and they want to expand, we'll actually have two layouts. We'll have version one and then expansion. And
Ah,
that will have the extra tanks and take in consideration, where that glycol piping is coming from, where the glycol chiller, does it have enough capacity to pull that off? Because you might as well spend 10% or 15% more than get a whole nother glycol chiller when you have to put in, 5, 10 more tanks, depending on obviously the space. So we try to tackle that up front and make sure that everything's clear for when that expansion does happen. They know where it's going, and we can just put the circles and put all the equipment in there and say, this is your year two, this is your year three, this is your expansion three. So we really try to take that in consideration and consider all the utilities and support auxiliaries that are needed um, as you grow.
uh, that makes sense. We do some of that version control with things for us, for example, from a technology standpoint. We've got a technology roadmap,
Mhm.
versioned and mapped out at 36 months. But I never realized, I mean, that could be I imagine very helpful for a lot of reasons to be like, we've got our walk and our plan and how this, then we can, once we start to pull the trigger on that next phase,
Mhm.
from the equipment standpoint. So good to have that. Good to know because, like I said, sometimes I stop in and they're ready to go. They're cooking. It's year one, and then it's like they're already thinking about year three and year five, which is also exciting too. But you hear about those horror stories where they hit a wall where they're like, yeah, we thought we were gonna put it over here. We didn't realize that. Oh. Well, it'd been made much more efficient if this went right over to the canning line, whatever it is, right? This like, had we done that over, I hear that a lot from breweries who are looking for a second location,
Mhm.
and they are just like, we were so hyper focused on, I got to get stuff and start making beer next week, and then they're like, we did so many things wrong about from a functionality, from being able to make it more efficient for our teams, maybe take less people to make it if we had done it different. Everyone complains about the location of X and how it's just, this is just a nightmare to try to get in there and get stuff out. I hear it all the time. And then the second one, they're like, we're gonna do this right. We're gonna start with a conversation about drains, right? So all of that, how important flooring is, and it flows through there and their equipment and
Right.
quality
Mhm.
and installation and support
Mhm.
and elements of that. So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Your take on uh you've now 18 countries. What is one of the easiest, and I'll give you the option. Definitely want to know one of the ones that's the easiest to. You don't have to touch on one that's lower on the list of more challenging to get things and stand up with. But on the flip side of that, is there one that you're saying they're really embracing, a brewing solution, they're growing, or it's easier to get there and get it and stand it up and support and just I don't know. Who would you say is one that's been really just embracing the bespoke solution set from recently
Are you talking?
from a country to easiest to yeah.
I think honestly, because we have our local rep there in Justin Fox, Australia,
Okay.
we've probably, I don't know the percentage now, but I'd say over 50% of our equipment goes to Australia. So while the regulations are high, his expertise and our experience in shipping there for the last, I think we've been shipping there for, since the beginning, basically. We've really been able to fine tune that and to really check all the boxes before anyone gets started on, are you checking this? Are you checking that?
Yeah.
Not only equipment, like I said, it's consultancy as well. So Justin can bridge those two together. And that's where that local knowledge really pays off. And it's not just equipment, it's consultancy. And our reps or our partners can also provide consultancy on top of the equipment to make sure trade waste and you're doing everything right as far as that goes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised by that answer. I've been hearing, and we work with a couple of different technology providers that help automate some of the process within Australia. And I got to say, I think there's different markets that lead. And I feel like in the last, 5 to 10 years that Australia has been leading, not so much in just pure numbers of it as best practices, right? There's a discussion around environmental impact. There's a discussion on quality, long-term thought, all of that stuff that I think goes in to say we want to be around in 5 to 10 years. Now, when I talk to a US, or Canadian brewery, et cetera, they also say they want to be around in 5 to 10 years. They want to be, sustainable. They want to look at the best fit solution and they want to have that support. But I think there was such a focus on speed to market that it
Mhm.
it created, I think, a little bit of now that when I mentioned that philosophy of that second location where it's starting to click in, and I think that was just native in some of the Australian market trends where they're saying, every sometimes learn from another one that they watched, right? Where you watch sometimes go through a boat, but you're like, that's great. How can we ride some of that momentum, but then also learn a little bit that maybe standing something up 6 months, maybe taking a few more months to do it right. So that I've been hearing that the wave I think will continue to, ripple through in some of the Europe markets and some of the US markets on things like automation maybe requests and or the ability to have a map of what's your 5 year 10 year equipment strategy where you ask someone at some of the US based places and they would say I don't have that on a shelf. I don't have a version 3 or version 4. So I that makes sense that you're talking that Australia is really and I'm glad to hear too that sometimes I think there's a negative impact that more regulations means slower and it just has sometimes a connotation of red tape and that it isn't more efficient and that it despite some of that if I'm understanding right it still is a you know good partnership good approach if I'm understanding that in the Australian market.
Yeah, no, definitely. The government is I think they just announced next year they're putting some more excise rebates, which is great. Probably not enough that brewers want, but it's a step in the right direction. There's going to be challenges in every market. Southeast Asia is always, oh, we just shipped something to Malaysia, and it was just it was a very interesting process for working with customs and getting all the documentation, all the questions they had, because a lot of times, it's new to them, so they don't
Yeah.
know what. They have a lot of questions about what's in this container, what's this, what's a hot liquor tank. Well, there's liquor in it. It's like, no, it's actually just hot water tank. You got to be careful because if they don't know or they see something labeled incorrectly, there's going to be a lot of questions. And as long as you have those drawings or the technical specs to back it up, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I imagine every new country's got to have its own. it's got to be a learning curve for you guys as too on both sides of it. But that is great, John. This is great. I appreciate, telling a little bit about some of the things you're seeing and really interesting to see not just what some of the things are happening and what people can be looking at and thinking about in the US markets, but globally. Anything that you could touch on, I always like to end on a high note of stuff you're excited for in 25, 26, things coming down the pipeline, things you guys are working on. So, like I said, sometimes there's so much doom and gloom in the industry, and when I interact with people, there's always something cool. They're kind of, hey, this is what we're excited about in 25, 26. Anything come to mind for you?
Lately, automation has been great. We actually work with a automation company out of Melbourne that's actually sending the automation packages to the UK to be installed. And that's been great to see them flourish and expand their capabilities because with automation, especially in the UK, US, Australia, you can drive your costs down as far as manpower. And manpower is expensive.
Hmm.
So then you can also really lock in your processes and have that data to really drive your quality, which has been cool. So I'm excited to see that. As well as with my partners in the UK, we've started a packaging solutions company as well, a brand in Cosmo packaging systems. So we're going to start dabbling into flash pasteurizers, more advanced keg washer fillers, keg washers, automated lines, so on and so forth. So excited to see that and support not only the beer industry but craft beverages in general, whether it be kombucha, distilleries even.
That's great. That's exciting, John. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for sharing some of the things you're seeing and really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for your time.
Yep.
Cheers, Dan.